Cafe, great. I was thinking of walking down here. There you are with the Manhattan Project in 2019. You kind of saw bioterrorism and pharmaceutical companies and all that working together, which sounds like you knew something we didn't know at that point. So I don't know whether with Poison Sky there was a starting point, an inspiration, or anything we should know about just for the future years ahead.
I don't know. I from my own medical past and various on experience with MRSA and a few infections over the years from skin grafts, I developed this intense interest in antibiotic resistance. You know, the way that bacteria becoming resistant. And I researched it, and the more I looked into it, the more interested I got, and the more convinced I was that this is more dangerous than climate change. Wow. And I wrote this last thriller, and I used that so the terrorists induce and more antibiotic resistance, and people get sick and they can't be treated because the drugs don't work anymore. And out of the blue, the chief medical officer for England, Professor Dame Sally Davies, summons me to the NHS headquarters in London.
Yeah, I saw that pic.
Because she was fascinated with, and this was research I'd done as to how all these antibiotics were out there, the way the doctors prescribed them, the way the drug companies were advertising stuff. And so she asked me to speak at a couple of conferences in the UK, which I did. So I'm no kind of medical expert, but I have a feeling for spread of infection and pandemics. And so that led into the second book, written ahead of this current pandemic.
Okay.
But again, I've got these very clever terrorists who are taking revenge on the West, but this led by an old Japanese guy whose family were killed in Hiroshima. But he, you know, in the usual thriller, there's a bomb ticking and a ticking down, and it always gets diffused at that. But these guys are really smart. They say, now, what are the West's weaknesses that we can exploit? And in this latest book, no matter what technology and power the West has, and this time they attack the States.
And thank you so much.
There's my coffee.
Cheers.
They attack the States, they attack London, and they attack Munich. And no matter what resources and technology they have, they can't defend against this attack, because these guys go back to medieval times.
Right.
And so they throw them completely out. So I'm also very interested in lateral thinking, just the way to look at things differently and get different types of ideas. So this terrorist does that. So the only way the cops are going to solve the whole thing and find out what's going on, because they're clueless, they don't know how this infection is spreading, who's doing it, why they're doing it, how is it happening. But we happen to have this one cop in Manhattan who's buddied up with my hero from the last book, and he is a lateral thinker, and he coaches my man in how to look at things differently and get different types of ideas. So it develops into a thinking race against time between the terrorists and the cops as the bodies pile up, as to can they save the world in time.
No, the thing I was thinking on the way down was that here you are, you're in St. David's, you're having a good time, you've got a great English teacher. We'll talk about Stephen Donnelly in a minute.
Yeah.
But that pivotal moment when you're age 20, you have this tragic accident, obviously changes your life. But I'm wondering whether you recognise that teenager, whether would you be writing, do you think, what that guy wanted to write? I don't know whether you can sort of recognise him, or do you think now that he probably would have had a very different, he probably just would have gone and done something entirely different? And
I think I probably would have. I mean, I spent 28 years as an estate agent after I left school. That involved quite a bit of writing.
Yeah.
Some would say it was good training for a fiction writer.
A lot of fiction there, yeah.
But you're writing a lot of business reports, newspaper stuff, but I always wrote, and Stephen Donnelly reignited an interest in English in me in fifth year and sixth year, and we're still in touch via a WhatsApp group, which is great. But so I always enjoyed writing stuff for the papers. So when I left the property business about 10, 11 years ago, one of the things I wanted to do was write a book about my experiences. And that was called Small Steps. It was a bestseller in Ireland, it was very successful.
And that came out September 2012, that came out, and it did have a huge impact. Like it just went beyond, you think, well, people sort of within a circle will hear about it, but this kind of went on and on.
Well, I had a great publisher, Ballpoint Press in Bray. They got me on every radio station and afternoon TV and the whole lot, and every newspaper. So we got all the PR, and that book is still selling in droves. I mean, that has sold nearly 10,000 copies.
Wow.
And the reason being that the deal with Ballpoint Press always was that I would take back the rights after whatever it was, 3 years, when it runs out of steam in the shops.
Yeah.
Because my main job is a motivational speaker, and the trick is, you do a talk, you get paid a fee to 300 people, and Microsoft or whoever it is buys a copy of the book for everyone in the audience.
Nice.
So
late show treatment there for everybody.
Exactly. So Microsoft have bought hundreds. Specsavers have bought hundreds. The banks have all bought hundreds. Loads of people. So hence it is sold, and it's still in. I can't stop printing it.
And was that an easy stroke comfortable transition to go from, you know, real estate and you know, you would have been who you are and you would have had the life that you've led, but to take it onto a stage and to actually start to, you know, let people feel what you feel and kind of be inspired and get that motivational kick. Was that a hard transition, or was it already there, do you think?
I think it was already there, and because particularly in my last year or two in the property business, I was managing director of what's now called Savills, 260 staff, big company. I found myself being invited to speak a lot at corporate events about businessy stuff, and you know, maybe networking, and that's how I said, okay, I seem to be able to do this. And then this little idea was growing in my mind, that's something to do for just a change of scene. I had done 28 years in the same office, was to write this book and go out on the road with, and you know, working up all the time my inspirational speech. And that has worked very well, and that's really what pays the bills. However, it's been murdered by the pandemic, as you can imagine, apart from a little bit of online stuff. But
well, I'm also curious about the fact that we naturally assume that those who have those, you know, tragic accidents in life and they end up in a wheelchair, or they end up with, you know, losing a limb or becoming blind or whatever, that they automatically have to become Gandhi. They have to become very rich and deep and inner beauty and all that. But I would imagine there's just as much potential to become angry and pissed off and you know, and hate the world.
Just as much. I mean, I lost both legs. That's a serious disability. One above knee, one below. To burns. I'm badly burned in a lot of places. I woke up in hospital surrounded by the survivors of the Stardust. And I spent, you know, 18 months in hospital. So that was no barrel of laughs. So what? I mean, it was an experience when you're 20. So, but I know a lot of guys who did do the angry, you know, and never really come out of it. Fight the system, fight the physios, fight the prosthetic guys. And and they never get a good result. I was lucky enough, whatever my temperament, the support from my family kept me solid and always positive, and I worked with the system, if you like, and was able, you know, walk around well now for 30 years or more, whatever, for almost 40 years.
Well, I'm guessing there must have been weeks, months, and maybe even years of, you know, getting to that point where you felt completely comfortable, because obviously once you'd, sort of like anybody who decides I'm going to, you know, go to that top of that mountain, I'm going to make it, is a sort of, you know, there's a kind of a good feeling that you have a purpose. But I'm guessing it takes a while to find that sort of motivation, because, you know, if you're there with the Stardust, the survivors, and, you know, you feel that your life that you knew was gone, I'm sure it takes a little bit of time to find your peace with that and start to...
It does, but not too long, oddly enough, because, you know, I got going again. Well, it was 18 months or say, maybe before I walked again, and that wasn't in great shape. But from there on, it was a bit of a comeback, and I was driven partly, I think, for my family as well, to try and get back to where I had been as close as I could. And you have to learn how to drive on hand controls. I get into a wheelchair every morning when I get out of bed. It's the most practical way to the bathroom. So you change lots of things in your life, but they work just as well. You're making changes. So, but it's a control alt delete moment in your life. It's a total reset, and to some extent, I felt there was an element of a second chance about it. So, whereas before I think I was Mr. Average, drifting along in a groove, happy enough. Suddenly I felt, well, am I happy enough to be average? You know, let's give this a really good go. And whether it was work, whether it was knocking around in a band, whatever it was, so I'm going to do my best at this. And I think that's come into the writing thing as well, and that I feel very personally, you know, a sense of pride in it. You know, the great sense of when somebody buys a book off your website and you put it in an envelope the next morning and post it. You know, it's not exactly high finance, but it feels good. So that's kind of where I am now.
And that move from, you know, the natural thing of small steps and pretty much telling, you know, your experience, the move into the Manhattan Project, and, you know, this is like 2019, I think, came out in May. Stepping into fiction is a bigger kind of risk in a way, because you have to prove purely on what's written there, rather than you're an amazing man and you've made an incredible life for yourself. This has to just work by itself.
It's very difficult. Writing fiction, non-fiction is, you know, much easier to get published. Smaller niche market, publisher will, they know, okay, you'll sell X number of copies, and you usually will sell exactly that. Fiction, it's so hard to get published. I mean, I have 100 rejections for different versions of that first book. Finally, you know, I just got it good enough, and I got it edited, which made a big difference. And suddenly 2 publishers wanted it. I got an advance. Next thing, it's published in Ireland, it's published in the UK, translated into European languages, it's published in Germany, it's in audiobooks. That was a big lucky break, but I tried really hard. So fiction is very, very hard, you know.
And I like that you're on Sky News. You said you're kind of being called over to England because of, you know, some people are fascinated by what research you've done and what you've come up with. I mean, that must, I don't know whether you feel that this is now kind of a big part of your life, or whether you still see it as something that you're just happy to do and really, you know, it's one of your jobs, rather than I really want to push myself as an author. And
it's a bit of all that. It's a big part of my life. The problem is you're almost certainly not going to ever earn a living or anything approaching it. Even with bestsellers in Ireland, even with books doing well in the UK, the average earnings, one of your guests said this to you before, $6,000 a year. I mean, from the Manhattan Project, I made probably just about €10,000.
Okay.
Now that's
a big success, you know, when you're on the relative scale.
So you can't live on that. So you're hoping to get, the books have to get better. You have to break through to where they're selling thousands of copies a week instead of a couple of hundred a week. And then you're being paid a big advance for every single country you're published in. Then you're making money.
Netflix, get to Netflix, get to Amazon, get an adaptation.
I'm so frustrated. Everyone who reads both the new book, Poison Sky, and the Manhattan Project, it's a movie, it's Netflix. And, you know, trying to break into that, even though it's a gold rush for content, is, where do you go? I mean, I have tried it, and they all have agents, and the agents have agents, and the agents have agents. It's next to impossible.
It nearly always happens that some executive's daughter reads it, or wife, and says, you got to read this, and then suddenly it's a chance thing as opposed to knocking on doors and trying to sell it to them. It's almost that kind of thing seems to happen again and again, where, you know, the kid likes the Beatles, so they get on Ed Sullivan's show because Ed's not sure, but the kid loves them. You know, all this kind of thing.
There's lucky breaks. I mean, almost every author would tell you they had a lucky break somewhere along the way.
So
I haven't had I had a pretty big one with the chief medical officer in England. Who that certainly lifted
That's
my
a big
profile.
Star on your copy.
Yeah, it is.
I should ask about those sort of St. David's days. You know, that would be, you know, something that would have been roughly the same time I was there. Mr. Donnelly was there, wonderful teacher. And I don't know whether you'd have strong memories. You're from Bray, but you were welcomed, right? You were okay. There was no...
Yeah, but the story to that was both my sisters, Sheila and Helen, were in David's from Silverstream all the way up. And my dad was a teacher. He was also secretary of the ASTI, big into education, but a huge advocate of co-education. So St. David's was one of the first schools in Leinster, for sure, to go co-ed in the mid-70s, early 70s.
It ruined my study, that's for sure.
Yeah, me too. And God bless them. They said,
damn you, Karen Lynch, damn you, Jenny Coots. I could have been a lawyer.
You need to, Paul, go to co-education, so you go down where your sisters are. And I loved St. David's. You know, it was great. And I left in 79. You know, but when I started in first year, I was probably about 40% boys, and then the proportion probably just grew to 50-50 as we went through the years. But a great school. I mean, 300 pupils in it at that. I don't know what it is now, but a great memories of Greystones. We come down here and socialise all the time. Rory Power being my best pal, and I had good fun in Poison Sky in the new book. Of using quite a number of characters of my friends are in here. So several St. David's legends. Les Barrett. The first line in the book is Les Barrett loved flying. Les Barrett is an engineer who was in my class in St. David's, and he's now
I know Les well,
a multi-millionaire living in Malibu, California.
I didn't know that. I better get in touch with him now.
Yeah, get in touch
Holy
with him.
moly!
He sends money to everyone in Ireland. All you have to do is ask.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And
I'll put his email for people, anybody from Greystones, I'm sure he'll help them. Undoubtedly, of course.
No problem.
Yeah.
Michael McNulty is another classmate.
Oh, yeah.
And Michael, of course, is a pilot, and there's a lot of flying stuff in here.
Yeah.
If you're into planes, and Michael gave me a lot of help, so he's in there as a character as well.
And you would have seen the interview with Stephen, and he was deliberately sort of, not naming names, but certainly people were in there. Did you have any kind of reason to get in touch and say, you know what, I'm popping you in this?
Oh, I did, for sure. I mean, you're risking being sued, so everyone who's in it gave their consent.
Okay.
Yeah, made sure of that. Yeah.
So we should sort of wrap up by saying, obviously, your website is the first place to go. You'll get everything there, from the Kindle version to get the book itself signed.
Yeah.
But that must be something, especially during the pandemic. It's such a wonder to have that sort of outlet where you can actually still, connect to people and they can find you, because if you're living back in 20 years ago, you just would have been in your home and waiting for a phone call from somebody who might know somebody who then kind of gets in touch. I'm guessing that sort of works well for you, that you have that presence and you can still be connected to it.
It is working well, and now this book I self-published because, and people are surprised at that, because the publisher in the UK, who was a small independent publisher, they had an option over this book. And then, to my amazement, they declined it. They said they didn't have the resources to do it.
Wow.
And I thought, great, I'll go to a bigger publisher. To discover rapidly that big other publishers will not take on a book that's any kind of a follow-on from a book that's been published by another publisher. So I was marooned. So hence I'm doing it myself, and I'm enjoying that. You have to do a lot more work, all the social media stuff, the marketing, but. There's advantages, I probably get €6 from the sale of this book,
as opposed to
when it's through a big publisher, you get 60 cents.
Nice.
So that's quite a difference. So it's available. A paperback is available either. There's about very few left on my website, and I sign them. Or when they run out, people can get them on Amazon, paperbacks. Or there's a Kindle for less than $5. So and it's been the great thing. It's only out 3.5 weeks. Is that there's maybe 25 reviews in the States, for example. And there's sites there that you need to get reviews on: Goodreads, Amazon.com, and NetGalley. They're all 5-star reviews. Every single one of them.
Wow.
So, and on Amazon.co.uk it's 4.75.
They're all written by Les Barrett, I noticed that though.
They are. Well, to be honest, Les made the difference. It would have been a 3 with Les, but Les always made things happen. So it's going well, and I hope people enjoy it and get a laugh out of some Greystones references.
Nice.
And so on.
Well, we'll put the links. It'll make it very easy to catch. And I gotta say, I know that as I said, that there's always that sort of idea that you have to become some sort of Dalai Lama figure after any kind of major upset in your life. But the fact that you still have a lot of fun, like it's not like you're sort of trying to be calm and beautiful and sweet and everything's rosy. There's a kind of keeping that edge and that humour.
I'm just the same as I was in that front, but it does cause you to think a little bit more about it. It couldn't not have any effect on you, that you would think a little bit more about what had happened to you and how you got to where you are, and really, I suppose you feel like whatever potential I have, you want to make the most of it and not just frizzle it away.
But I just love the fact, before you put the camera on, you were telling me the most filthy jokes, the stuff I've never heard before, just outrageous stuff. I just don't know, a man of your age.